Welcome back. Well, you know, this past week I've read about 15 different publications, not issues, but different publications, newspapers and magazines, and looking at how they cover certain events. It's kind of interesting that some will feel that one issue is very important and another will say, nah, it's not that important. Sometimes this takes on a political bent because it is something that they want to promote or something that they don't want to promote from a political aspect. Here is one, for instance, in USA Today, and this is agents sue over immigration policy. Well, they claim, and I think they're correct, that they have been asked to do things which are illegal relative to the apprehension and deportation of illegal immigrants. And they say that the Obama administration is asking them to kind of ignore certain things. And of course the Obama people come back and say, oh, no, it's actually, we're deporting more people than we used to, et cetera, et cetera. Well, these agents say that's not the case. So they've sued the government over it because some of the things they've been asked to do are actually illegal. So this is how USA Today took a look at it relative to this issue. Whereas you have here the Chicago Tribune, finally on page 16, this is the way they look at it. This little piece here. They don't give you any details. You have no idea what in the world they're talking about, but they couldn't exactly ignore it because it is a national story. But look at the insignificance of it compared to this. This is USA Today, and this is the Chicago Tribune. So it doesn't fit their agenda, so they kind of make it into something insignificant. You're not interested in it because you don't have enough detail to be interested in it. They just make the statement that there are some agents suing the federal government. Let's move on with something more important. Here in the Wall Street Journal, it is the continuing saga of Assange, the WikiLeaks individual taking asylum in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, and the back and forth political rhetoric, if you will, over this event. The interesting thing is, and as I pointed out a couple of weeks ago, is that Ecuador is now run by this leftist. Well, they don't refer to him as a leftist in here. They just seem to refer to him as somebody who is trumpeting his anti-American views. That's a euphemism for being a red these days, I guess. But at any rate, he is garnering support. And one of the organizations that he is called on is that he's already mobilizing support for his position. Last week, foreign ministers of the Union of South American Nations, an intergovernmental union, defended the asylum move. Well, they don't explain to you in here that this is the organization they formed after the John Birch Society stopped the FTAA, the Free Trade Area of America, which would have cost the United States its sovereignty. Would have abrogated the Constitution and destroyed the independence of the American people. So once we were able to stop that particular item on their agenda, they then called for another union. They didn't call it a free trade union then, because free trade is only used to fool Americans and some Canadians. It isn't really free trade. They are regional agreements under the control of the United Nations. And if you don't believe that, go to any free trade agreement and read the first 2 or 3 paragraphs. They will always subordinate it to the United Nations and the control of the United Nations. So at any rate, when they wouldn't fall for, or we wouldn't fall for the FTAA, then they formed this new union, didn't even bother to invite the United States to come, and all the other Latin American states joined under communist leadership. We keep telling you that what's happening below the border is communism. It's not getting into your newspapers, but more and more, just like Ecuador, are being ruled by communists. It's a concern. It's a real concern. Another thing that they're not talking about, and I want to continue the saga of South Africa. I've pointed out to you in the past that Mandela and the ANC, the African National Congress, their leaders are communists. They pose under the hammer and sickle, give the communist salute. That's a clue. But it somehow or another it doesn't get through in the newspapers. Now here it shows that they're having a probe into the mine shooting in the platinum mine that we've talked about. Here shows an organizer with a billy club organizing the union people to sit there and wait for the former head of the youth arm of the ANC, the African National Congress, to come and talk to them, who just happens to be a communist. Well, one of the things they're not talking about in these articles about South Africa and the mines and the riots at the mines, and these workers are fighting each other, is that much of this is due to the tribal differences that they have. Now, everybody assumes that the black population of South Africa is indigenous. That's not true. Most of those people have come into South Africa looking for work from those countries in Central Africa that have no work. And the living conditions, as bad as they may appear in the newspapers or on television to you and I, are better living conditions than what they left. But you see, as these people come in, the tribal problems are still there. They don't speak the same language. They don't like each other for whatever reasons they have. They fight each other. Look what happened in Rwanda. It was a mass genocide where they almost wiped out the Tutsis. And so these mine operators have had to put tear gas bombs in the mines. At least that's the way it was about 15 years ago, and I don't know that it's changed. So that when these tribal wars break out in the mines themselves, amongst the workers, they just hit a button, it explodes the tear gas, the fight stops, they calm things down. So there is not this idea that it's all black and white in South Africa. There's black and black and black and black and white. And they don't always get along. And that's a point that's not being brought out in these articles about South Africa. It just happens to be the way it is. Hopefully it'll change. At any rate, one other thing that we see happening in Europe, we've always said that the people, the powers that be in Europe, are not going to allow the European Union to go away. Now, there are certain individuals who are banking that the euro will go away, and that may be not. I don't know. But they're not going to give up the power that they've accumulated within the European Union. And now we see in Germany they're going to have a referendum to even make it worse for the Germans. Let me read you one paragraph. Chancellor Angela Merkel has consistently promoted a vision of more Europe as the answer to the euro crisis, meaning tighter integration, but also stricter oversight of European fiscal policy. Currently, steps in that direction have ended up in Germany's highest court, facing legal challenges from opponents who say that handing more money and authority over to the European Union violates the country's constitution. Well, I guess the Germans have as much problem with the leaders of Germany violating the Constitution as we Americans have with our leaders violating the Constitution. But now they're going to have a referendum to try and get the German people to agree to more regulation, more control, more oversight from the European Union over their domestic policy. This is not a good thing. We know problems that we've had with Germany in the past, and those are in the past. Germans never seem to understand, though, over the years, that you can't do certain things. You can't build power without it becoming a serious problem. People will use that power. Hopefully the Germans will reject this referendum, but that's something that we'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, they will do everything they can to build more power in the EU, save it, possibly save the euro. Until next week, we'll see you then.